Hi everyone, Lou Burrows here and welcome back to the show. Before we dive into today's episode, I would just love to share with you that this episode and this podcast is brought to you by Riverside. And like quite literally, I use Riverside to connect with guests and record podcast episodes that I bring to you every single week. I love Riverside for so many different reasons, including their community, which is available on Discord and Facebook. Their suite of AI tools, including AI show notes, magic clips, and how easy it is to use the platform. If you are a podcaster, creator, I would highly recommend getting onto Riverside and using the platform to record all of your content using the platform. To get started today, all you need to do is click on the link in the show notes of this episode and use code Luke Burrows, that's code Luke Burrows, my name, easy to remember, for 15% off your subscription. I would just also like to say thank you to Riverside for providing me with this discount for you guys, as I know it's going to help a lot of you to get on the platform and start to see the amazing benefits and transformation that using Riverside will have for all of your content creation. Let's get started creating with Riverside. Now, moving on to today's episode. In this episode, we are joined by Elizabeth Kipp, who is a stress management and trauma specialist, as we discuss and explore stress management. We discuss what stress actually is, where it comes from, and its symbiotic relationship with chronic pain. So let's hop on over into it and learn all about stress, or nearly all about stress and its relationship with chronic pain, what it actually is, and where it comes from. Elizabeth, welcome to Raising Conscious today. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you, Luke. I'm so glad to be here.
For those who aren't familiar with your work, I would love to spend 5-10 minutes or so diving into a little bit of who you are, why you do what you do, and actually what you do as well. So who is Elizabeth and why do you do what you do, and share with us and everyone who's listening and watching what you do.
Thanks so much, Luke. I'm a stress management and historical trauma specialist in recovery from over 40 years of chronic pain. I'm about 11 years healed from that now. Chronic pain and concurrent addiction. The doctors, and I was using the Western medicine model. Their answer to chronic pain was opiates and benzodiazepines, and they don't really heal chronic pain. They may veil over the experience of it in some way, but they don't heal it. So anyway, it took me a long time to find my way into actually healing the chronic pain. And it turned out the medication was actually making it worse. So, and I learned in that journey that there's a lot of belief in the world, in the Western medical model, that you can't heal from chronic pain. I heard it many times. It's beginning to be better understood as a brain dis-ease. And we're beginning to kind of understand more about the neurophysiology of it. So you're getting more and more integrated doctors, but generally they don't really understand chronic pain. So my mission is because I kept being told you can't heal from chronic pain. And my mission is to explain that that's a myth, and B, to be a living example of what recovery from that can look like. So I work in stress management. That's a huge part of chronic pain, in stress management and historical trauma. And I also work as a trauma-trained and yoga-informed addiction recovery coach. Everyone I know that's in recovery from addiction has this chronic pain piece underneath it. So I come in from that angle. Also, I do the Ancestral Clearing. I do Ancestral Clearing work, which addresses the ancestral burden that we carry. And it was very helpful to me. And of course, yoga and meditation, being yoga informed, the yoga and meditation is a big part of my practice. So that's kind of how I got here, and
Mm.
and that's what I'm doing currently.
So many questions to dive into, so much to explore. Let's start with, you mentioned there that you turn to the Western model and that your teachings and that your philosophy is based in a different model. What is that model, and how did you discover it to help you to help heal yourself, basically?
Yeah, I would adjust that slightly by saying I healed under an expanded model. Um, I went into a pain management program in 2013. We're coming up on 11 years now of me being in that program, and met Dr. Peter Prescott, who wrote this book, Conquer Chronic Pain: An Innovative Mind Body Approach. And he had he was a Western doctor. He had a number of board certified medical degrees, and he was also a Qigong energy healer. And he blended these two. He also saw a different, he came from kind of a different angle. I started in college, I was trained as a research scientist. So when the doctors told me that I couldn't heal from chronic pain, I was devastated. But after I had a chance to get over my being devastated, I realized that they'd made an error and that they were operating in a scientific paradigm, and scientific paradigms shift. And and uh, and also, so I realized that that's the model they're working in. I also realized that um, science has limitations. The doctors told me, you will not heal from chronic pain. And I knew there and then, because of my background, that they had made an error. They'd forgotten their basic science, which is all about probabilities, not facts. So they could have said, you might not heal, or the odds are, but they didn't say that. They made this pronouncement. And so I knew that I was operating in a space where they were assuming that their assumptions were she's not going to heal. And they never even asked the question, why isn't she healing? Because they jumped to that assumption. So these are things that, just because of my science background and my training, that I knew there were some problems with the way these doctors were coming in. Peter Prescott didn't do that. He came in very curious and open. And he also knew that the scientific framework is limited by the definition of science. You can only science can only comment on that which it can observe, measure, or describe. But we live in the all that is, not just in the part that science can observe, measure, and describe. And we heal in the all it is. So he knew that we were going to have to reference something outside of that. He did stick to the Western model the best that he could, but this Qigong piece, this energy piece, was a leap outside of that. And I already had a yoga background and a meditation background. So now there were a lot of studies on meditation and its value as a healing tool. But at the time that I was dealing with chronic pain, that was barely cutting edge. That was just, doctors didn't know anything about that. So I had to kind of go into the alternative community and look at acupuncture, which at that time was alternative, and look at Reiki and massage therapy and other kind of energy medicine therapies. And ancestral clearing was a piece of that part of, I learned that, and I was exposed to that in Dr. Prescott's pain management program. So it was a much more holistic model. So it included the science piece, but it expanded it, and it just became a larger, a larger model. And we dared to step outside of what science could observe, measure, describe.
You mentioned there that you healed through, I think the phrase you used was all that is. For people that may like not know what that is, like, you know, they might be hearing that for like the first time, or maybe they relate that to, like, maybe they've heard it within spiritual communities and kind of have that assumption with it. Like, talk us through that. Like, what do you mean by the all that is, and why science can, and the difference between coming through that lens rather than a science lens?
So I love this. Is quantum physics fits right in the middle of this whole conversation. It's the bridge that links both worlds. Um, we live in the unified field of consciousness, would be one way the quantum physicists would call it. Kind of a more traditional, old school description might be we live in a universe, but this is larger. This concept of it's a universes of universes, that kind of thing, like a larger field. And science can perceive that, but it can't perceive all of it. It's always looking for what are we missing? What are we missing? And ask. And I'm not a quantum a science physicist expert by any stretch. I can barely follow the kind of the dumbed down version of it because I just don't have the math skills to really understand. But I understand some of the concepts, and they're the more they look, the more complex it seems to be. So the rule around science is when we're taught from a science perspective, when we're talking about any phenomenon, we can only comment on the part of that phenomenon that we can observe, measure, and describe. And we can't observe, measure, and describe everything in the universe, this universe of universes. We can't actually see all those things at this time. That's one of the things that's exciting about science. It's always changing and expanding, and our paradigms shift and stuff because it keeps changing. So understanding the limitations of the model in which we're operating, which is the universe of universes, understanding that science model is limited and respecting that, but understanding that we live in the whole, we live exposed to all of it, not just the part that science can observe, measure, and describe. Did I answer the question?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. I think it was a good explanation because I think a lot of times people one turn off that I think when we talk about these subjects is that people can't wrap their head around it, and I think kind of understanding that science can only measure and describe like this narrow part, and that there's much more that exists beyond that. That's kind of what I'm hearing, and I think that can help a lot of people can kind of understand what we're talking about before, and we'll go on to talk about some of the other healing methods. If we bring it back to chronic pain, and what we're talking about there, obviously you healed through different methodologies, and it sounds like combining both worlds. Like I believe that that's quote unquote one like the best approach, right? But I think that we live in such of a extreme world where a lot of people think like you either have to be in the science camp or you have to be in like the quote unquote alternative medicine camp. Right? You can't necessarily live in like in like both, you know. You can't, you know. So like if I go to my GP, my MD, you know, he's going to be very much potentially like in the Western medicine world, you know, he isn't going to provide me with insights on Qigong, right? And if I go to a Qigong expert, like that's where their teachings are. So we kind of live in like this very kind of extreme world on like the two sides. Do you think the answer to health is through that holistic approach where we blend kind of both models?
Yes, I would be I would be looking at the healing instead of Western versus alternative. I would be looking for what works for healing, and that means being open to all of it. One of the things that I learned the hard way, because I was really entrenched in the Western medical model for a long time. One of the things that I learned when I stepped outside of it, which was a big deal for me, was I had to believe more in the power of the healing in my body than in the power of the disease. And if you're stuck in a medical model that says you can't heal from chronic pain, then chronic pain becomes the focus, and that's an entrenched position. So I had to begin just by opening the mind and allowing another option, another possibility for me. And one of the gifts that I had was I had this science background, and I was always wondering what's next, what's outside of the paradigm. I always like working at the edge of the science, whatever part of science I was working in. So I was always used to kind of like, is there something else? So I already had a predisposition. Is there what's happening in the mystery, in the part that we can't see? And so that was a big step for me to go from my own personal experience of, you can't heal from chronic pain. You have this thing. It doesn't seem to shift much. And now I began to understand the power of the mind in my experience, which was one of the reasons I was attracted to your podcast.
Excellent. Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to have you on the podcast. Chronic pain. So when we say chronic pain, let's define that. What are we actually talking about there? And do you think that people, similar to the experience that you had, like when they go through a Western model and doctors tell them that you can't heal from chronic pain and that becomes their focus, do you think that people like then stay in that place because they maybe subconsciously kind of see the doctor as like the authority figure, right? Like they've been to medical school, I haven't. Like, what do I know? Type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so they kind of see this figure, and what they tell them is like gospel almost, and they kind of give their power away, I guess, to actually realize that they have healing capabilities within themselves. So yeah, I'm interested to touch upon that. Actually, what we're talking about chronic pain, and if you see a lot of people that actually go through a similar experience to what you've been through, staying stuck in like in this mindset, and then like any wisdom that you have to share on how to start to transition out of that.
Yeah, that's a big conversation. I'll try and pare it down. Chronic pain is any pain that's felt 15 days out of 30 for 3 months or more. That any pain is physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, even financial. The body can't tell the difference. The brain can't tell the difference between one kind of pain and another. It all sends the same signal into the brain. It hurts. So a breakup is like a divorce situation, or a breakup can be a chronic pain experience if it lasts 15 days out of 30 for 3 months or more. A death of a loved one, the grief experience is a chronic pain experience if it lasts for 3 months or more, which in many cases, both of those things do. So just kind of understanding the terrain we're working on. The brain can't tell the difference between a broken bone and a broken heart. Is what I'm getting at. So that's kind of a profound understanding of the organism, and from an integrated point of view, you can't separate mind, body, and spirit. That's another thing that Western medicine is beginning to shift into. Instead of being so reductionist and location focused, they were focused on in my case, it was my low back. I had a low back injury that I broke a bone, and it split in two, and the front part of the bone slipped forward into my pelvis and pulled the leg nerves with it, and I needed surgery, and it took a bunch of surgeries, and we got the surgery part down, but the pain never went away, and they kept focusing on the back, but it wasn't actually, at that point, it wasn't the back anymore. It was this full body phenomenon. It was a whole thing. So it's kind of like, yeah, and let me just flesh that out. You could have 3 people that have my condition, that had x-rays just like mine. 3 people, and you'd see 3 different experiences. One, a person that didn't have any pain at all. Another who had pain only when they were stressed, and another that has pain all the time. How do you explain that? By just looking at the x-ray, at the location. You can't. That's the reductionist viewpoint. This integrated, more modern, this shifting into integrated, understanding that the mind, body, and spirit, they work as one unit. That really, Dr. Prescott was the first doctor I ran into that actually understood that. So anyway, so I sat in front of, I sat with thousands of patients over 40 years in doctors' offices, hospitals, rehab centers, as a patient, right? I ran into all these people, and most of them, they didn't have this background that I had in kind of, what is science, and what is this? What are these doctors even operating? What model are they operating in? They couldn't even ask those questions, let alone advocate for their positions, because of exactly what you said. And I was that way myself when I first got, even with all the training I had, because they'd gone to medical school and I hadn't. I had a specialty in a whole other area. I deferred to their knowledge. And it wasn't until I was challenged with my own devastation, my own, my own, I can't believe this has happened to me, that I'll never heal from this thing. That just smacked me. It's just right in the face. And I went into a deep, long, dark night of the soul for about 2 weeks. And I came out of that with the understanding that they had made an error, because they said, you will, right? As I said, because of the thing that I experienced, the difference between those doctors and Dr. Peter was, Dr. Peter had a couple of things. One, he had a wider scope of training. Two, he was intensely curious. He didn't really take no for an answer. That was the third one. And he was very humble with the knowledge that he had like 10 different medical degrees. I had never seen anybody that had that much that much education, but very humble. So all that information that he had, it wasn't kind of his driving force, really was his heart and this kind of understanding that there's more than the mind that's at play here. There's a whole thing going on. So that was helpful to me. And I remember the first time I met him, it blew me away, because the first thing out of his mouth was, "Hi, I'm Peter Prescott. It's an honor to meet you." And I was stunned, because I'd never met a doctor. I'd never met a doctor who had that, who had all the other doctors I met had these massive egos. And it was like it was an honor for me to work with them. You see what I'm saying? So there was this, and when I worked with Dr. Peter, it was on a collaborative level. It wasn't, he's better than me, he's up here and I'm down here. It wasn't like that. So, and that's another thing I feel is really important when you're working with a health professional. You guys got to meet each other together. You can't have one up here and one down. You can't pedestalize the doctor. It doesn't, or I don't care who the healer is. You can't do that. You have to meet them person to person and really have a conversation.
What's chronic pain's relationship with the area that you focus on with stress and stress management and etc.?
Yeah, great question. So let's look at the stress just generally. We have this mechanism in the body called a stress response, and it is a series of kind of biophysiological responses, behavioral responses as well, that we go through in response to a threat, whether it's real or perceived. So so the stress response, this reaction, this set of reactions, whoop, turns on, and we meet the threat. And once we've met it, the stress response goes off. So that's a balanced, normal stress response. In chronic pain, the stress response gets stuck in the on position, so that we're constantly, looking for we're trying to deal with threat all the time. And we're actually not made for that. It creates all kinds of stress hormones in the body, and we're just not made for that. So hence the the burnout rate, for instance, one of the things that I work with is I designed a small course for students who are graduate students in the mental health field, who and they're getting ready to go into the profession of mental health, but they don't have tools to manage their own stress, and they're going to be stressed in that environment. So I brought in, like a whole class on self-care for healthcare professionals. I brought in another one on trauma-informed yoga to help them with a physical practice to help move their stresses out of the tissues. And I brought in another class on ancestral clearing so that they could help them clear any kind of ancestral burden that they're carrying. So there's a burnout rate of 2 years in the mental health field. So that's a big deal. So we really need to get look at chronic pain, because it's not only caustic to our bodies, but it really wrecks our lives. We're not able to function, and it also affects the people around us,
our relationships and everything.
Yeah.
Okay, so using the example you gave beforehand, where you said you can have 3 people, one person damage their back and absolutely fine, no chronic pain. Other person maybe just pain when stress comes up. Third person, pain, like flares up, chronic pain all the time. Bear with me here as I try to make the connection. So it sounds like that when we have excess levels of stress or trauma in our lives, for whatever reason that might be, that and then let's say we have an accident where we break a bone or we damage our back in that example, it sounds like those that are more stressed or face or have had more trauma that maybe they're going through at the same time is part of the kind of connection that why the chronic pain would stay with, let's say, person C would be because the body can't heal because they're going through the stress and the trauma, if that makes sense.
Yes and no. The body can heal.
Yeah.
It's
but I guess what I'm saying, because there's so much stress and trauma, like the body's kind of like dealing with that stress and trauma. Because like let's just say like I could I don't know, break a toe, etc., and not have any chronic pain. But let's just say somebody else breaks a toe and they have chronic pain in that foot, and so I guess it's a little bit of an assumption was maybe that person at that time is going through more stress and trauma and maybe some like ancestral issues, and it's now showing up in the body through them breaking that toe, if that makes sense.
Well, yeah, you're talking about something called allostatic load. Allostatic load, which is a measure of how much stress the organism is actually taking. And so when as an example, I'm a great example of someone who my chronic pain was a result of massive allostatic load. I had this accident I had when I was 14, where I fell off the rock and I fell off a horse and landed on a rock and broke this bone. I got up from that accident, walked away, and it hurt. No question about it. But because I could walk, I didn't realize I'd really hurt myself, other than, it really hurt. I didn't feel like there was any particular damage, and nobody bothered to get an x-ray. So nobody took me to the hospital. They just went, she's walking, so she must be fine. But I had a history of irritable bowel syndrome. I had a history of emotional abuse on my mother's side. She was also a chronic pain sufferer and had undiagnosed and untreated bipolar disorder, and medicated that with alcohol. So I was like walking. It was like walking on eggshells when I was around her. So that's very stressful. Right. So I was already a chronic pain sufferer when that accident happened, and the body can only take so much, and then, it just bloomed into this massive problem. So, I wasn't, I was able for years to like go to school and perform and get decent grades and all that stuff. But I still hurt. I had physical pain, but it wasn't until later that the pain situation the whole situation became intolerable, and it really took me down. Yeah.
I would just like to take a quick pause and break to mention a few years ago I learned, experienced, and continue to experience the power our breath has on our mind, body, and spirit. But with many different breathwork techniques and methodologies out there, which one do you choose? There's one company in particular that I use and love, and that's Soma Breath. Soma Breath is a holistic school and community revolutionizing the way we approach wellness through combining groundbreaking breathwork and meditation techniques with the power of music, and it's all backed and proven by science to help you achieve profound and lasting change. At Soma Breath, there's no single guru. Instead, you join a vibrant community of like-minded individuals and world-class instructors dedicated to guiding and helping you on your breathwork journey to health and wellness. Their unique approach leverages the ancient wisdom of breathwork, which is very fitting for this podcast, merged with cutting-edge technology and uplifting music to create a truly immersive experience. Whether you're looking to reduce stress, boost your energy, or deepen your meditation practice, Soma Breath offers the tools and support you need to thrive. It's time to take control of your well-being and discover the transformative power that your breath has. Join the Soma Breath community today and start your journey to a healthier, happier you. Visit somabreath.com or just click the link in the show notes and experience the transformation for yourself. Now, let's get back to today's episode. When it comes to stress and stress within the physical body, do you think that we have quote unquote weak areas? So when our load our stress load is really high, a certain part in our body might flare up, if that makes sense.
Well, that's I can answer that from an esoteric point of view, but that's a little bit above my pay grade in terms of the science of it. In Ancestral Clearing, which is by the way, is a trademarked and registered modality, energy modality, complementary to all other healing modalities. It was trademarked and registered by John Newton of Health Beyond Belief. I'm one of his practitioners. From that point of view, we tend to see certain issues show up in certain parts of the body. That's a tendency that we see. So we kind of begin there when we do ancestral clearing as an energy modality. When I do a session with people, for instance, just as an example, the right side of the neck here, right here, kind of is we would kind of look at that as the spiritual aspect of that symptom. We're not diagnosing, we're looking at the possible spiritual root. See, I'm being very careful here with my words. Possible spiritual implications of that would be being blamed, judged, and misunderstood by men, or men in the lineage that blamed, judged, and misunderstood others. Just as an example. Yeah, we're very careful in that practice to not make claims. We don't diagnose, but we look at the possible spiritual meaning underneath certain where things show up in the body. But science-wise, I still think that there's a lot more to be studied on that. I mean, anger kind of shows up in the core, right? Anger will show up there, and you do see there are some maps out that show different body temperatures with different emotional states, but I can't really speak to that beyond that. I've just seen them. I don't really know the science underneath it.
From a societal level, why are we so stressed, and what are some steps that we can take to alleviate that stress?
Yeah, I love that question. Yeah, so the disease, the dis-ease that we're all experiencing is what's next. We're all trying to jump into the next moment, either because we don't like this moment or we're under so much pressure to perform that we have to go there next. We're just operating at such a high baud rate. We're just moving so fast, and there's always more information. So there's this more thing happening, and I need more, and the only way I can get through life is to have more, and all this. There's a lot of that. So what's happening there? What's happening is we're missing the present moment. We're so busy trying to get into the next moment and comparing the last moment to the one we're about to get into that we miss the present moment, which is the healing field. This is where the healing field lives. This is where life is. Life is in the present moment. But imagine, and the brain, it's kind of interesting because the brain is this highly tuned, highly adaptive organ, very sophisticated. And it's so cool because it changes based on current conditions. So what we're doing in the present moment affects how the brain is. Now, the brain has the imprint of the past in it, but our power to affect the future lives in the present moment. But if we're always trying to get there, now we've got a habit in the brain, and this is how we do life. We do life like this. We're trying to get there, and we miss being here. And that's a recipe for suffering and very high stress. Yeah. Did that make sense to you?
Totally. How do we change
Yeah. So
that?
the answer is this is why meditation is so helpful, because it helps us be present. It gives us a practice every day of training the nervous system. This is how we're going to do this thing today. We're doing it like this in this moment, right? And it helps calm the mind, and it helps it helps all of us, really, not just me, but it helps us be more effective in whatever we're doing because we're actually here, and we've got more clarity, and we're not so distracted by trying to get to the next moment. Yeah. That's a kind
What
of a
would you
thumbnail.
Yeah, what would you say to someone who says, Elizabeth, I've tried meditation, but it doesn't work for me?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So the idea of meditation is not to try and tame your thoughts. That's not what it is. Meditation is simply being present with them and watching them. And because it will happen, when the mind takes your attention, gets your attention on one thought, and you go off chasing that thought, and then you realize, oh, I'm in meditation. I'm supposed to be like meditate. You just come back. So it's a practice of watching the thoughts, and when you get hooked by them, you just come back. The mind, there are some kind of cool tricks that the yoga has to help you center, like putting your eye focus at the third eye or the tip of the nose. When you focus the eyes, it helps focus the mind on the task at hand, so that it helps you stay focused on whatever your tool in meditation is, whether it's just watching the silence or watching your breath or chanting a meditation or just repeating a meditation in the mind, whatever it is. If you bring the eye focus in, it will to the tip of the nose or the third eye point where the nose meets the brow. That will help focus the mind more easily. But there's turbulence. The mind is a turbulent place, and so usually people say to me, "Well, meditation doesn't work for me." The answer to that usually is, I'm like, what is your understanding of meditation? Because I'm not sure that you might have a misunderstanding of what meditation is.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people, when they come into meditation, they feel like the practice has to be quote unquote perfect, where they're like super still and
Yeah.
they're like not getting distracted by all their thoughts. And it's interesting because I was having a conversation, I think it was a couple of years ago now, with my cousin, who was asking me on tips of like getting into this practice. And he said that he tried it, but he was getting distracted by like the noise outside or something. And I was like, well, how do you know that like in that moment, like I was trying to share with him like that was meant to happen. Like you're trying to control something outside in your meditation practice because it's distracting you, but just come back to like the present moment, right? You can't control like these things. So I think a lot of people feel that the practice needs to be perfect. Where do you feel like that comes from? Like a societal narrative, or just people's beliefs around meditation?
Well, I can't speak for everyone, but I do I do experience. I get a lot of this myself with people that are new to the practice. Also, I don't know where it comes from. I think again it comes from there's this we got to get it all done kind of mentality. And we got to get it all done place. Where is there any place for silence? There isn't. So you kind of got to kind of understand, what is the underlying force in your life? What is the story you're telling yourself about your life? If the story you're telling yourself about life is I got to get it all done, well, good luck with meditation. So the idea is like, what story are you telling yourself? Oh, I have to be perfect. Well, good luck with that. You're a human. Yeah. But, when I'll tell you where we have to be perfect, because I ran into this, progress, not perfection thing. And I was like, no, we actually need to be perfect in some spaces, right? Like I would like to be perfect with the decimal point in my checkbook. Like it depends, I need to have that decimal point in the right place. Otherwise, there's pretty serious repercussions, right? Also, when I stop at a stoplight, I expect the people behind me to stop as well, or there's going to be a problem, right? So perfection, we kind of need perfection in certain spaces. Also, when I used to be a coder in computer with computers. And when I even now online, the keystroke that I'm hitting needs to be the right keystroke, or the computer's going to do what you just told it to do. And if it's not the right keystroke, it's going to do, it's going to respond, incorrectly. Right. So we need to be perfect there. Everywhere else in life, we really don't need that. But I had to understand that distinction. Oh, do I need to be perfect here? No. Actually, I need to be perfect here, though. So, where are we putting that story? That story applies a few places and it doesn't really apply in others.
Is all stress bad, or is there good stress?
Oh, no. There's this thing called eustress, EU stress, the letters E and then U and then stress, which is just living. I mean, we're going to be stressed and living. But chronic stress is the stress response that's gone into the stuck position, and that changes the brain and it changes the body chemistry, and it just creates, ultimately it creates dis-ease and mental issues as well. So yeah, there's eustress, kind of regular stress, and then there's chronic stress, not so good.
And can we actually, quote unquote, manage stress?
Well, I think we can. I don't believe that I can live a stress-free life, but I can certainly build my capacity and my resilience to meet the pressures of life in a more healthy way, in a healthier way. Yeah, in a healthier, and that's called resilience. That's called building resilience. That's that's what I teach. I teach those methods. Mm-hmm. I'm not the only one. Lots of people teach them, but that's part of what I do.
What would be your 3 top methods for people who are listening to this right now, who maybe want to get started with lowering their stress load? Well, where would you recommend people to start with?
Well, meditation would be the first thing, because it's just the number one tool at calming the mind. So a high stress situation creates chaos in the brain, and it also creates a pronounced negative mind. We already have a little bit of a bias towards the negative, but it really, you're wrong, I'm wrong, the world's wrong, I'm bad, that's all their fault, all that kind of stuff. That's chronic pain in the brain. So meditation helps to calm that. And there's a lot of different kinds of meditation, but that would be one of them. Another one is learning how to breathe effectively. So that's just a simple long deep breathing, keeping that exhale as long or a little bit longer than the inhale, and sit for 11 minutes and do that. It's not easy. The mind's going to start bouncing all over the place, and that's okay. The thing is, in both of these things, in the breath and in the meditation, this is the third tool, you're going to meet resistance. Think about it. We have a habit of, this is how we do life. We do life in a stressful way, and now that habit has momentum. When you think about it in terms of a physics problem, right? An object in motion stays in motion until acted on by an equal or opposite force. Our habits have momentum, and they're moving, right? So you need to, in order to change that habit in the brain, right, you need to come at it with an equal or opposite force. Meditation and breath work are two examples of an equal and opposite force to help you shift that habit.
So if somebody started meditation or breath work today, a lot of people, as you said, kind of want to living like this, like now, and kind of what's next kind of world. I guess the question I'm interested in, to help people to like approach these practices with more of like a long-term and mindset of like, it's actually, when you adopt them, they become part of, like, for me anyway, like become part of your lifestyle, rather than going into them thinking, well, I'm going to meditate, I'm going to do breath work for this week because Elizabeth told me to help me manage my stress load. And then let's say a week goes by and they're still stressed, right? So like, what's like the framework, the mindset that we need to be, or that you recommend people approaching these types of practices with, to help them not just like their stress, manage their stress? Because I found like these practices help with so many other different domains of our lives. And so I'm kind of get into that, because I feel a lot of people sometimes can approach these practices with that more short-term mindset, as I like to call it.
Yeah, let me flesh out what I was just saying. So we're talking about resistance. We're talking about, I'll do it for a while, and now I'm uncomfortable, and I'm going to get up and leave because I've had it. I'm enough. Enough with this. It happens to me. I'll sit in my practice and for an 11-minute practice of some kind of breath work, and I'll get partway into it, and there's a part of my mind that comes in and says, "We're done. You got things to do today." I'm like, "No, we're going to sit here." Well, that's my resistance. That's the momentum of the old habit coming in and saying, "We like this way of living. You're trying to change me into this, and I like doing this," right? So when you meet your resistance in your practice, "I don't want to do this anymore," "Elizabeth's freaking crazy," "Luke doesn't know what he's talking about," that kind of stuff, that's our resistance. And you know what your resistance is? It's your evolutionary edge. That's when the brain is starting to change. So when you meet your resistance in breath work or meditation, it's working. That's the signal that it's working. Keep going, right? That's the thing. So that means that you're about to change, and so you can make a choice. I say this: in any moment, this thing that I'm doing, is it building the new way of life? Is it helping to build the new way of life, a new way of living where I'm calm and I'm not jumping into the next moment all the time, and I'm able to be calm and present? Or is it reinforcing the old program that got me here in the first place, right? This thing I'm doing, how is it affecting? Remember, I said the brain is this very fine-tuned reacting to what is happening in the present moment. So our choices that we make in the present moment have a pronounced effect. Now, a chronic pain pattern is a habit, and it took us a while to build that. So it takes a while to rebuild a new one. And so a week isn't enough. You try 9 months to a year, make it a lifestyle. Because it took you time so it takes, yes, the brain is very responsive, but building a new habit is a little bit bigger of a project. Now, don't be discouraged. The thing is, for me, it was like, oh my God, there's tools. This is great because I got by on my wits for years. Right?
Elizabeth, what haven't we spoken about today when it comes to stress? And I understand there's probably quite a lot that you feel, given context of like the other topics we've spoken about, that our audience, people who are listening, watching this, need to know about in the time that we have left.
Well, I'd like to say that the important thing that I like to kind of say at the end is that the greatest healer in your body lives within you. Doctors can set a bone and stitch up a wound, but they can't tell the body how to heal. Only the body knows how to do that. And it was very helpful for me to learn that. That was something I learned in the School of Hard Knocks. Which way am I looking for the actual healing? Yes, the healers in my life help me, guide me into setting the maximum of the best conditions for healing that they're aware of. But it's up to me to put them into action and then get out of the way so the body can heal on its own. And so once we understand the healing power that lives within us and really begin to understand how to leverage different aspects of the body like meditation, breathing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now we have tools. We're actually not just addressing our chronic pain, but we're addressing our lifestyle that created the chronic pain in the first place. And now we're being able to go in a new direction where we're evolving into our potential instead of our disease. Yeah.
Thank you. I've learned so much about the relationship between chronic pain and stress that we face in our lives, and so many other things during our conversation today. Where should people go if they want to keep up to date with everything that you've got going on?
Thank you so much, Luke. Yeah, they can find me at my website, which is Elizabeth with a dash Kipp, KIPP.com. You got to put the dash in there. And so Elizabeth-Kipp.com. You can find all my social media there. I'm all over social media, and you can contact me through there. You can set up an introductory session, and there's all kinds of free resources there as well.
I would love to invite you back on, actually, because I understand the work that you do around like the ancestral side is probably like a whole nother hour like long conversation that's very deep. One that I'm fascinated by. We've kind of touched upon it in areas in bits, but I will link all of your work down below. I just want to thank you again for sharing your insights and wisdom and knowledge today. It's been very valuable, and I'm sure it's going to help a lot of people. So thank you.
Thanks so much, Luke.
I hope that you enjoyed my conversation with Elizabeth Kipp in this episode of the show, guys. I learned so much. I learned so much about chronic pain, its relationship with stress. We've also touched on a little bit of healing and trauma and actually in ancestral healing, which is something I really want to explore and go down further because, these things have an impact on our health. Like stress has a massive impact on our health. And so hopefully now that you have more insight and wisdom into the relationship between chronic pain and stress and chronic pain, and through meditation have at least one tool, Elizabeth did share at least one tool to help you to navigate and overcome chronic pain and to manage your stress better, which is totally possible. We can manage our stress. We can deal with stress in much healthier ways than actually a lot of us do and actually fall into. And hopefully this episode gives you the insights, the knowledge, the wisdom, and some of the practical applications to help you to do that. Leave a comment below this episode, whether that's on Spotify or on YouTube, with what you took away from this episode and one thing that you're going to go away and implement. And I would also love to know if you would like me to explore ancestral trauma and then healing as well, because that's something that, as Elizabeth alluded to within our conversation, she also focuses on as well. I know that I would love to do that episode. Let me know if you would love me to do that episode, and we will make that happen. But once again, as I've said in previous episodes, thank you for stopping by. Thank you for choosing to listen to this podcast. I look forward to seeing you and speaking to you in the next episode with another awesome guest. See you then.